Hi everyone, this is Kona, and we're going to be going through how to use or how to do a comparison with categorical and categorical data. So two sets of categorical data that you want to compare. We'll be doing this via a table of counts, percentages, that type of thing. So to get started, our example question is, does social media use differ by gender? So to look at this, our variables are categorical, the gender one, female, male, other, and then categorical, how often do you use social media during a 24-hour period? 0 hours, 1 to 3 hours, 4 to 6 hours. So those are our different options. So how are we going to actually do that? So also remember, this is that handout that you do have access to that I'm going through, so I would suggest be taking notes on it. And then also, you've got this example Minitab file, so you can kind of play along at home. So how do we do this? We're going to go to Stat, Tables, Cross Tabulation, and chi-square. So for this one, it doesn't really matter which you pick for your row and column. As long as you pick the two categorical variables that you were working with, it doesn't really matter. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and do social media here, and then gender there. So like I said, doesn't matter whether gender was in the row or social media was in the column. They're both categorical. In fact, just a second, and I will show you what it looks like, what the difference is. So initially, I'm going to just show you what it looks like, just the counts. So first when we do this, you can see you've got 0 hours, 1 to 3, 4 to 6, all. Then you've got female, male, other, and where they kind of rank in all of that, right? So for this one, the important thing, or the thing to kind of think about, is just because you've got two women who did 0 hours of social media and 3 men that did 0 hours and one person who identified as other, what does that really mean? Does that mean, oh, more men don't use social media? Well, not necessarily, because you have to look at that in proportion to the total number of men, and then look at the women versus the total number of women, and this one, the other, in regards to the total proportion of people who picked other. So for this one, what you really need is a proportion, a percentage. So even though this is categorical data and these are just numbers, we are going to do a percentage here. So we're going to go to Stat and go back to Tables and this one. And I actually just noticed on my example I have them switched. So I'm going to switch these. So like I said, it really doesn't matter. But this way at least the example on the document matches this one. And then what we're going to add are the row percents and the column percents. And you don't need the total percents. And then click OK. All right, so for this one, it might look a little crazy. Now remember, we still have our 2 females with 0 hours, our 3 males with our 2 males with our 2 females with 0 hours of social media, our 3 males with 0 hours of social media, and one person who identified as other. So for this one, though, you're thinking, well, which do we look at? Do we look at the 25% or the 33%? The 25% or the 50%? Well, first of all, there is a reminder down here. I'm going to go ahead and do this so we can see the whole thing. And that's, you've got, it tells you the cell contents are the count. So the count is that very first number, that 2. The percent of the row is the next number. And the percent of the column is the third number. So what do they mean by percent of the row? The percent of the row is the going across. So remember, a row goes female and then across this way. Versus the column goes down. So female would be like the right to left here, or male would be right to left, and that's a row, versus your column is going up and down. So in this case, what this is telling you is that 25% of all of the females, so we're not comparing it to people with 0 hours, we're just saying for people who identified as a female, 25% of those people spent 0 hours on social media. So when we look here at males, we would have to also kind of look across this way, right? Because we're looking at the total number of males and whether that total number is differing, right? Well, when we look across that way, you see that 25% as well. So even though it's 2 females and 3 males, the proportion is that 25 and that 25% means it's actually equal. So there is an equal number of females, out of all the females, an equal number or proportion of females watched 0 hours or on social media 0 hours compared to men. But then, because there was a low number of people who identified as other, you actually have 50%, which seems really high, but that's where you kind of have to account for, and you have to acknowledge that, yes, it says 50% of people who identified as other spent 0 hours on social media, but there was only 2 of them, so it doesn't really tell you a whole lot. So we covered what the row means, but what does that percent of the column mean? So what that percent of the column means is that out of all the people who did not watch, I'm sorry, I keep going back to watch, of all the people who did not participate in social media, spent 0 hours of social media, what percentage of those people were female, male, or other? That's the 33%, the 50%, and the 16.67%. So that's where you're thinking about it this way, is that for all the people who didn't watch, for all the people who did not participate in social media, so if you took all of those people, which there were 6 people total, what would the makeup of those 6 people be? They would be 33% female, 50% male, and 16.67% other. And I know you can't have a partial person, but just work with me here on that one, okay? So that's kind of, if you think about it, you would take these 6 people, and then what were the proportions? And that's that 33, 50, 16.67. If you were thinking about it female-wise, you would say, well, what if I took all 8 females and put them in a room? What percentage of those females didn't use social media? And that would be that 2 people, or the 25%. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Just because I think it also is really interesting. You could also look at it going down this way. So who spent the most time on social media? Well, first of all, it depends on how you look at it. So if you look at it out of all the people who spent 4 to 6 hours on social media, so there were 6 people who spent 4 to 6 hours on social media. If we put them in a room, what would their makeup be? Well, 50% would be female, 33%, approximately a third, would be men, and 16.67% would identify as other. So that's one way. So if you say, well, out of the people who are spending 4 to 6 hours on social media, yes, proportionately wise, there are more women. But what if you looked at it in terms of the total number of females versus males versus other who are looking at social media like that? Then you would say, well, out of all the females, only 37.5% are spending 4 to 6 hours. So in all honesty, it's pretty equal in the 1 to 3 and the 4 to 6 for women. Versus if you look at men, 25% are 0 hours, 58.33% are 1 to 3, and 16.67 are spending 4 to 6 hours. So, and then you can see 50% people who identify as other. It's 50% 0 and 50% 4 to 6. So I hope this didn't totally blow your mind. If it did and you want to talk about it, come talk to me about it. I will say that we will go into this. This is, even though it seems like a lot, as long as you are just kind of getting it, it's okay. We're going to go into more detail. But I promise you, we are going to look at this because we will be doing chi-square as we go further along. In fact, you will have a project where you do a chi-square. So we will be doing this again. This is just a good chance for you to start wrapping your brain around it. In fact, I think you'll also probably have a quiz and some other stuff related to knowing which number is which in here. But right now, just as long as you understand the basics, you're good. When we go to get into more detail, there'll be more videos and more detail. So hope this helps.